Hi everyone, how are you? Hi everyone. We still can't for some reason see who's here, so if you want to say hi before we start. Hi. I'm gonna start momentarily. Just want to let more people come before I spill the beans. Okay, so I'm gonna get started, and I want you guys to feel free to ask questions or to make comments if you want. But hi, I'm Latoya Leary. I'm 33 years old, and I am a virgin. It's probably not how anyone wants to start any conversation, especially at 33, and there are reasons why. It's super cute when you're like closer to your 20s and under, but then people start to tell you different things when you get older, like your late 20s and up. So it no longer becomes this, oh, that's so cute, or oh, great decision. Nonetheless, so I want to talk to you about why I'm 33 and I have never dated, and I don't really have any intentions on dating. And I want to also kind of let you know some misconceptions that are pretty common when people who identify in some of the ways I'm going to present myself, not because I like labels, but because these particular labels probably will help you to better understand where I fit in things, and will also give you words that you can go look up if you're interested in more information. So let's get into it. And by the way, totally can't see who's here. It's not telling me. So all I see is Miss Q is here, Miss Debbie is here, hi. And if I can't see anything else. So if you want to say hi, feel free to say hi. So, as I mentioned, I don't really do labels. I do think that people need to be free to identify themselves, and sadly, labels are somewhat useful, but they're also extremely detrimental detrimental to humans, and they often inflict some form of harm upon people, forcing people to sit within narrow categories, which is why I don't like to use them. But as mentioned, these will kind of help you out a little bit in thinking about where I might fit in with my sexuality. So if I had to fit in anywhere, it would be under two labels. One is a label that discusses your relationship with sex and or sexuality, and the other, romance. I am aromantic. This means no romance. And essentially, I don't have romantic desire or attraction. I've never looked at someone or have been in a relationship with someone and felt, those tingles that you guys talk about feeling, or had those thoughts that make you want to get to know someone a little bit more. Never had them. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Totally lost. And another label that I fit under is probably asexuality, which means no sexual desire. So I've never had sexual desire, and I don't even get how it feels to have sexual desire. This didn't occur to me until recently, actually. Before, like last year and the years before, I just kind of assumed I was heterosexual because that's normative and that's what we're told we are supposed to be. And I never really thought about my relationship with people when it comes to romance or sex until most recently. And it's mostly because I teach a class on gender and religion for FSU, and that class really forced me to have to ask myself questions about how I might identify. I've been teaching people about these identifiers for a really long time and never really considered where I fit in. But I will totally tell you guys, there are lots of misconceptions that come with this, because humans, especially really religious humans, and I'm talking about Christians, that is not only Christians, it's lots of people. There's this idea that people are naturally sexual beings, that we have an inclination, some kind of drive or pull towards sex or sexuality, and this is how God made us. And we quote Genesis chapter 1, go replenish the earth, multiply, be fruitful and multiply, to justify this. But that is absolutely not a fair thing to consider. It's not a fair way to interpret the text. All humans are not inclined or susceptible to having sexual desire. And I think I might be living proof of that. And there are others too. In fact, it wasn't until I started thinking about this for myself that I realized how really dangerous and detrimental teachings that suggest that all human beings have sexual desire is. I thought about all of the people who grew up in really orthodox religious circles, those who are Pentecostal and, and other forms of Orthodox Christianity or charismatic Christianity, who might have been told, bottle up all your sexual desires, and then you get married, boot up, and all of a sudden you're supposed to take the top off and all of a sudden be sexual. I imagine that there are quite a few people who get married and who try to remove that top and realize that there's nothing there. Then their actions are just obligatory. They work, they move, they do these things because they must. And they must because they are told that they must. That this is what you do when you are a wife or a husband. This is what you do when you have a family. And it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. And I think it's time that the body of Christ and other social groups and institutions start to really pay more attention to these things, allow different types of people to talk and to have voice, and we really just teach about sexual orientation and expectations in a more broad way. So let's talk about some misconceptions. Hi, Miss Felicia. So, one misconception that people have of people who identify as aromantic or asexual or something is this idea that they just haven't come in contact with the right person. No. That is totally not it. So one thing that people don't really think about is everything is really fluid. People are gray. We don't fit into really thin and small black and white boxes. You know, that's not how humans are. Sexuality is fluid. And people have attractions and they make choices based upon those attractions. You know, I've come in contact with tons of people and I have still yet I have not had any type of romantic or sexual attraction to either of them. So it's not really that. And I think in so many ways that it's really less about connection and more about how people see the world and relate to the world around them. The way that I see the world and relate to the world around me doesn't include sex and romance. It just doesn't. You know how you might have people even as young as, 6 or so, identify that certain people around them are really cute. That was not me. I was not that child that had my little fake boyfriend in elementary school. I was also not that child playing MASH and imagining my entire wedding and planning my whole life and my family. I just was not that. So this kind of goes quite far. This isn't something I grew into. It's like a door that just has not been opened. So it's not quite that. It's not quite I haven't run into the right people. I literally just don't have interest. And I'm okay with that, you guys. So I want you, my friends and family, to totally be okay with that because it's cool. I think another conception is that I'm closed to dating or romance. Also, totally not true. In fact, I'm so open to dating and the idea of romance being something I can grow into that I might have a date in a week. Legit. So it's not that I'm closed to dating or closed to romance. I honestly just don't have desire. And honestly, I kind of feel like I've been very well cloaked over the past few years, all my life really. And it's not until most recently that anyone has even found much interest. And I think for me, it's all about, hi, Uncle George. I think for me, it's all about just being honest and upfront about what's there and what's not there. And so with this person who found interest, my answer was something like, I'm flattered, but I gotta let you know, I don't really have romantic attraction. So I can't promise that anything is gonna progress. All I can promise, or maybe promise, is friendship. And I'm cool with friends. But to be honest, part of my response was also, that if in the future I ever had any bit of sexual or romantic attraction, it will probably be to someone I've been a friend of for a really long time. Like something might just click, but I really do not imagine this just being some random person who asks me out, especially someone who catcalls because I'm not answering. Gotta come with respect. And yeah, I'm totally open. The point is I'm totally open to the idea of not dating. Like I'm not trying to be booed up or anything like this. I'm just more so open to developing friends, and I'm open to the idea of God opening this door to desire. I should also note that there are many aromantic or asexual people who develop sexual desire or a romantic desire for one person. like very few people. And I should also note that just because a person identifies as asexual doesn't mean they're aromantic. There are lots of people who are sexual beings who are aromantic, which means they are sexually attracted to people, but they do not like romance. And then there are people who are asexual, no sexual attraction, but they're romantic, which means that they want the romantic relationship. They can just do without the sex. And I'm just both. Like, I don't want the romance. I don't want the sexuality part of it either. I'm not really interested. And in fact, if anything, I might actually fit under the sex repulsed category for right now. I'm kind of like that 2-year-old who's in like grade school, who you give the lesson to and who's like, ew. Like, I don't get why people want to kiss each other. That makes no sense to me. What makes you want to kiss someone? And I know this sounds real crazy and you think I'm just joking, but I'm really not. I really don't get that pull that people have to one another. I don't get it. It doesn't make any logical sense to me. My African friend once told me that when I told her about my sexuality, that she would never have believed me if she didn't know me personally. So if you know me well, you probably do believe that I'm down this path. But I honestly just don't get it. Yeah, I mean, sis, I'm not sure that desire awakens for everyone. But right now, yeah, there's no desire at all. So, what else do I have here? My third misconception is that there is this suggestion. We can totally do a Zoom webinar. Like, I would totally meet you guys on Zoom and let you ask any questions that you want. Just let me know below if you want. If you want to talk to me more in person, we can totally do that. The third misconception is that I'm suggesting that I'm forever going to be in this way, which suggests in so many ways that I am going to be eternally. Hi, Miss Tamala. I hope you're doing well. Just got your text. I'm doing great. I hope you have a great day as well. But I think this idea in itself, like, I am not in any way or another suggesting that I am never going to be in a relationship, that I am never going to get married or have children. First off, I am totally having children, but they are not coming from my belly or from the other area. I mean, if that happens and I do get married, that would just be an act of God, because I'm not interested. I'm not interested in anything related to that. You know, includes childbirth. Totally repulsed. Beautiful thing. Love children. Totally repulsed. Hi, auntie. Just letting you know. And I was going to be an obstetrician. But I think it's the science of it all. Hi, Ann. I think it's the science of it all. I can totally do some surgery. I can totally convince myself that, you know, I'm making lives better. If it's my body, no. Not at all. No children coming out of this body that I know of or that I desire. But I totally want to adopt, you guys. I've wanted to adopt children since I was really, really young. Maybe like elementary school. I remember telling my mom I wanted to adopt a kid from every nation. And then I got older and realized that that's hundreds of kids. You know, we can't do that. You know, not in any type of... you know, real parental way, you know. But I will adopt. And I might start an adoption process within the next few years, because it's something that I want to do, and it's one of the contributions that I want to make in the world, to the world. I want to rear up some beautiful children, and they don't have to be biologically mine. So, yeah, there's that. Aw, thanks, sis. I'm not sure that my sexuality will evolve, but you know, if it doesn't, I'm cool with that too. And this brings me actually to the fourth misconception. It's that people who are in my position, who are 33 years old, who've never dated, who are totally not interested in dating, are just waiting we are virgins in waiting. No, I am not waiting. I'm not waiting for God to bring me my perfect spouse or my perfect match. That's not something I want or need or desire. And that's just the truth. I am not waiting. I have never been waiting. Never. So this brings me to another huge thing. People find out and they're like, either like, be honest. Now that I'm in my 30s, people are like, girl, you need to go have sex right now, because you don't know what you're missing out on. And I'm like, pretty sure I don't need that. And then you have the other end of people who are like, man, I wish I had your strength. And I'm just sitting here like, I'm doing nothing. And this is really the truth. A lot of people assume that people in my position, we are working real hard to maintain our, air quotes, purity. Just because you're a virgin doesn't mean you're pure. A. And B, there's no work involved at all. I don't have desire, so there's nothing to work against. There's no temptation in that area in my life, you know? And because of this, I get to experience the world in ways that a lot of other people do not experience the world, you know, because I think about things differently and my time goes to other things, you know. Not saying that a partner is a distraction, but I don't got those. While people are over there crying about their, you know, relationship with their partners, you know, I'm crying about something totally different. I'm still crying, you guys. It's just not about romance. You know, it's not. In fact, today I was texting a friend, or I was talking to a friend on the phone, and I was telling her about this date that I will have in a week. And I was like, you probably never thought we would have this conversation, right? Like, these are the things you talk about, like, in your teenage years. And I am, like, way past my teenage years, finally having these conversations, kind of. Only because I'm open and not because I'm looking for something, if that makes any sense. Thanks, Ann. Sheba, hi. Hi, bestie. Temptation to like have sex or sex related temptation, no. What am I tempted to do? I'm sure I have temptations. They're just not related to people. I think a lot of my temptations are just probably all of the things that I think are more volatile in my life. I have I have the tendency to hide behind people and to shrink and to not speak up. That is something that I work through every day of my life. I have a tendency to just fall under like this blanket of fear. And it's because fear was my best friend growing up, like legit. And saved me from many circumstances, legit. So sometimes we still like, you know, be trying to like be in relationship and stuff, and that don't work. I also have a temptation to not be present, which is why ABI is going to be offering #Presence Matters webinars soon, because I have to work on being present every day of my life, because it's so easy for me to be sitting in front of you, hearing the conversation, actively engaging, and I am totally somewhere else, especially if I'm bored. If I'm bored, I'll totally be somewhere in the ether. You won't even know. I'll be having some side conversation with some entity, and you would just be like, oh, LaToya's here. No, I'm not. Let me think of some worldly temptations. When I want to avoid schoolwork or responsibilities, because there are lots of them and sometimes they feel so overwhelming, I don't know what to start with. I just want to shop with money that I don't have. But I will totally do it. Especially if it's Target. Something about the Targets. And I'm a geek, you guys. Staples. I love Staples. Target and Staples. Staples because of pens and their discount section. Jesus blesses that section. And Target because Target just has beautiful stationery. It's super bougie, and I'm a little bougie. And I have natural hair, and I'm addicted to natural hair products. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, that. What else am I tempted to do that's a little worldly? I'm not really tempted to sleep. I need to do more of that. I don't eat enough, so food isn't really a temptation for me. But maybe when I was younger, sugar was a temptation for me. But right now, no. I don't really know. I gotta think about that more. Sheba. I don't know. This is bad. But yes, I'm sure I get tempted. It's just not in the sex category. Any other questions? That was a good question. It forces me to think about a whole lot of stuff. Let's see what else I have here on my sheets. So I think I told you guys that I'm open enough to, in the future, potentially be in a relationship. You know, if I was in a relationship, just believe me, some of you guys are already in my inner circle and I already have you in mind to like totally bug when that happens, because you're not going to believe it, I'm not going to believe it, and I'm not going to understand what is happening and why it's happening. So I'm going to need a lot of help. And make sure that you're being patient and gracious, because it might seem abnormal for someone of a certain age to ask questions that, you know, you probably answer for teenagers or young adults. But it's cool. You know, it happens. We all grow in our own stages. We all start in different places in life. And I'm super advanced in other parts of my life. Yes, Sheba, you know you're on the list. You know you're there. So, happy to read that you are all for it. Because, you know, no promises though. It might not happen. And if I was gonna get married, believe me, believe it, my parents will not have to do enough. They would not have to do anything. We will have a destination marriage somewhere else where people can enjoy their little lives. My sister got married and my mom worked the whole thing. That's not happening. You know, I do have enough of that kind of thought thing going on to know that I refuse to put my parents through anything like that. In fact, I hope to be rolling in the dough so much that I can pay for my parents' flight to whatever country we journey into, and pay for my grandparents' flight to wherever we're going to, and honeymoon somewhere completely different, because we cannot be where my parents or family is. You know, get on a plane right after the I do's, because we need no questions. And I'll also tell you, totally tell you, if that ever happened, and I'm just speaking from my asexual self, if that ever happened, sex is not a thing that's going to be happening anytime soon after marriage. Totally letting you know that. Because in my mind, there is nothing going to be that's going to be happening during the courting phase, which means that when we say the I do's and I get that peck on the cheek because the parents can't see me kiss for the first time, we got to learn to do basic stuff like kissing, because we ain't doing that pre-marriage. No, bruh. You know, we're not kissing frogs, only the prince. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So no rushing into anything. And there's also a reason why I think this way. It's because God talks to me about sex and sexuality, actually. Very weird conversations, but quite fascinating. And I learned quite a bit about lots of things, fellowship, worship, all on account of these conversations. And I also learned about spiritual violations, and lots of them happen in sex. And lots of them happen in marriages, actually. So while the Christian church, many Christian churches are teaching that, you know, the marriage bed is undefiled and they're not talking about all those intricacies, and stuff, that is associated with sex and sexuality, what people are actually doing is violating one another over and over and over again and causing wounds that people don't know that they have. I will have a conversation about this in the future because I don't know why I need this information. So maybe you need this information. And maybe I should just talk to you about it. Bring, my scriptures or something like that. So, yeah, I hope it will help a lot of people from heartache and things of that nature. And I hope that it normalizes this enough to know that there are people like this, many people like this, and also to help people to understand that, people do not just choose the single life because they are making a decision to commit themselves to God. Some people just literally choose the single life because it's a part of their identity. And that has to be okay. It has to totally be okay for people to choose singleness just because they want to. It doesn't have to be, shrouded with religion. And another thing is we need to start reading these early Christian texts, and we need to start reading them more clearly. I bet there are accounts that we can actually reread or reconsider when it comes to sexual fluidity, when it comes to this idea of virginity and its connection with things like asexuality and aromanticism. So I think I would hope that it will lead to more and stronger readings of text as well. Uncle George. No. I do not think that people who have romantic inclinations are normal or not of the norm. I don't think that there is a normal that society can give us. I think normal is always relative, just as truth is, you guys, if you're being completely honest. Truth is relative. And I think that it is completely okay whether you are romantic or aromantic, sexual or asexual. Doesn't matter. Just be you. And while I do believe that the world teaches that sexuality and romanticism is the norm, it's in all of our movies, it's in all of our TV shows, it's in our books, it's in our Christian theology and doctrine, I do not think that this is something that should continue. We need to fight against these norms because they place us in a box. And another thing is divinity is in us. So if they're placing us in a box, guess who else they're placing in a box? Oh, is that God? And if God is in a box, then how can God be God? Like, one of the huge aspects or the better aspects of believing in God is believing in a deity who forever remains mystery. A deity you have to keep pursuing and you have to keep searching for. It's part of the lore of religion. So yeah, I'm happy I gave a good answer. Just go live when it does. Okay, sis, I shall. Miss Felicia, can I share some of those like spiritual violations or why the spiritual violations occur or how they occur? Is that the question? Oh, I don't know if you heard my question because it looks like you just came back in. Miss Felicia, did you want me to share more about, okay. So I definitely will have a future live about this because I would like to make sure that when I'm ready to share all of this, that it is in an organized form that will make tons of sense. Because I feel like sometimes the way that God and I talk, it probably won't make much sense to anybody. God is kind of like my Socrates. God will ask me a question, and then I'll be like, I'll give Ezekiel's answer. I don't know. Only you know, God. Funny. And then, God will essentially make me answer the question. And somehow I know the answer. And I'm able to think critically enough about how all these things relate to other things. And so I will need to organize these thoughts to share well. But one of the things that cause these spiritual violations is that it's because humans, first off, us humans, we do not understand essential and core aspects of our identity. So, in one of these non-sexual relations or characteristics of our identity that we don't understand is our connectivity to other aspects of creation. We're all feeding off of each other. And this isn't just Bible. It's not just spirituality. It's science. We live in an ecosystem. Without those trees that we're chopping down, we can't breathe, you guys. That's how real it is. There is a synergy. There is a connection between us and every single aspect of creation. And because of that, humans have to stop seeing themselves. We have to stop seeing ourselves as the height of creation. We don't run it. We serve it. And it serves us. We're nothing without it. So, that's just one example of that really gets you, or hopefully gets you to understand that we don't understand who we are. But when it comes to sex and sexuality, it has a lot to do with consent. A lot of us think of consent as that verbal or nonverbal agreement to take part in action. But it's deeper. It's much, much deeper than that. Consent, true and proper consent, has to come from every aspect of the human, which means that consent cannot be connected to obligation. You have to really consent for consent to be acceptable, which means that if your partner is saying, "Oh, I want to do it," and you are saying, "Sure, I'm going to do it because I live to please my partner," and your partner is completely ignoring the fact that you said with your mouth, "Yeah," but your body says no, your mind says no, and your spirit says no, super get off me, the answer should be no. But we don't really care to know people beyond their verbal or their external bodily consent. So I would say that is the cause of huge spiritual violations, massive spiritual violations, and that also leads to objectification, which forms other violations. We cannot objectify one another, and you certainly cannot do that with your partner. This also, shockingly, or maybe not shockingly anymore, also really connects to worship. Lots of us we don't get worship. We really don't. It's because worship is the spiritual manifestation, or let me say the opposite. Sex is the physical manifestation of what fellowship is in the spirit. And worship is just fellowship. Spirit beings, they just thrive off of connections. They thrive off of effective fellowship. And so when fellowship is not happening, when proper give and take is not happening, then there's also another violation. And this happens often in sex. And no, I'm not talking about, the whole aspect of finishing. You guys, I watch lots of stuff to educate myself because I must, because I'm going to sound like an ignorant little 33-year-old. And just leads to more understanding of this stuff. But nonetheless, there has to be give and take in everything. And this is not just in sex. It's in every aspect of life. Selflessness does not and should not exist. Selflessness is selfishness. You can't not effectively relate to the world around you if you are not giving and receiving something. You must do both. It doesn't have to be in equal quantities, but you must give and you must receive. And that goes with sex too, you guys. But outside of the body, because sex is deeper than the body, it is totally spiritual, you guys. I mean, everything we do is technically somewhat spiritual because we're spirit beings. So it's a little bit on philosophy. I promise to organize this a little bit more, maybe after another spirituality talk, so that you guys could better understand my thoughts. Thanks, Cord. A scripture. You know what, you guys? I'm going to be dead honest. You have to really know the scriptures and know them really well and play with the language to actually get some of this stuff. One thing that comes to my mind is their scriptures on worship. Them who worship God must worship in spirit and in truth. And then you have to dig at what it means to worship in spirit and what it means to worship in truth. Scripture is really hard to go to with sex, because if you literally Google scriptures and sex, like the Bible and sex, you're going to find a whole lot of texts that are going to make you mad, which is why ABI teaches a class called Bible, Sex, and Other Texts. And I make tons of people mad in a good way. Like, they are illuminated. They read it and they're like, man, I want to throw this Bible, but man, I want to read some more. So part 1 of that class is ending this weekend. Part 2 starts next week. So if you want to take Bible, Sex, and Other Texts, register with us. Talk to me about it. We're talking about the New Testament and early Christian texts starting next Thursday at 7 p.m. And the conversations are through Zoom, so you can just verbally talk. Nonetheless, let me look at this text that Miss Felicia has given. Okay. I'm going to just go on Google, because if I go to Accordance, I'm going to be so distracted by the language. I got all these language tools in Accordance. 1 Corinthians 7 and 5. Oh, chapter 7. Yes, do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a set of time, to devote yourselves to prayer and then come together again, so that Satan, or Hasatan in the Hebrew Bible, because Satan does not exist in the Hebrew Bible, come to ABI and you'll learn about why, may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Yes. One thing that Paul is really big about is self-control. And Paul, I have to tell you guys, you can essentially see Paul as a Jewish scholar before he became a Jewish Christian scholar. And one thing about rabbinic circles, Jewish circles, is self-control is super important. There's a text, for example, many texts in the text of the rabbi. So in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, for example, or the Palestinian Talmud, that suggests that if you get married as a scholar, you cannot get married and then leave your wife for days on end. And the idea is that when you are married, you have a ministry to your wife. And that ministry involves sex. But I must also tell you that virginity is not a strong attribute in Jewish and early Israelite circles. In fact, virginity is not longed for. It is not desired. It does not exist. Jephthah's daughter in Judges chapter 11, for example, mourns the fact that she will never lose her virginity. She will never be a woman. She will never have children, because virginity doesn't exist in these circles. does exist in early Judaism later, but virginity becomes a huge Christian aspect. It's one of the things the early church does to separate themselves. They have virgins who are virgins for life and who were like the holy angels. We're going to learn about those in Bible Sex and Other Texts Part 2. But yes, Paul is talking about self-control, and he is also really strongly emphasizing the need for husbands and wives to not neglect one another, except if it is for, spiritual purposes, is essentially what he's saying. If you're fasting, don't do it. But don't be fasting for the rest of your life because you're married. But I also have to let you know that Paul gives us a very progressive view. Paul is growing throughout all of his letters, which is why Paul's letters are so confusing. It's because Paul is growing in his worldview, and Paul is actually coming to these letters as a person who's unmarried and who seems also to not be interested in it, right? And those who follow Paul, like in the Acts of Paul and Thecla, which we'll read next week or the week after, they hear a doctrine of virginity. And what happens in the early church is there are all these marriages that are literally platonic marriages because they're married for financial purposes. They're not married for sex. So it's really hard to gauge the scriptures in that way too, because you know what's happening. But on the other end of things, you know that sex is going to happen, that people have romantic and sexual attraction, and that they're going to do it. And Paul is completely conscious of that. If you are going to do it while married. And if you're going to get married, realize that you have obligations. I think, though, that the text or the words I would pick at in the Greek here to make my point more thoroughly as far as consent is agreement. The need to sit down, chat about it, be in agreement about what you were doing and how long you are not going to do this or you are going to do this. And lack of self-control. Lack of self-control, not just being connected to the idea that somebody is going to step out if someone doesn't perform, but lack of self-control as also being connected to someone not fulfilling responsibilities while married if there are expectations for partners that this is something that will happen, like expectations that you set. And understand that all marriages are different and not every marriage sets these expectations. There must be performance or another conversation about expectations. That's how I think about it. But I would most likely pick at the Greek a little and go into that word agreement. Probably looking at whether it's the same Greek word that's used in the book of Acts that shows their oneness and unity and agreement, and thinking more critically about that, whether it is a physical thing or a mental thing or a spiritual thing, and how other texts in the New Testament and also in the Septuagint would use that term. If you're curious about how I would explicate that, what did I miss? Yes, difficult, but them old church mamas sure enough be playing. Yep. Certainly. They do. And I think it's because a lot of people suffer from not understanding the early church. You got to understand that none of this is monolithic. It doesn't come from one stone, one rock, one source. There is no one Christianity. There are multiple Christianities. They're all different. And, lots of us in charismatic circles, we talk as if there's just one way to see things, and there isn't. There really isn't. Any other questions before I get off? Any other sexuality questions? I don't know if there's something I missed, but if you rewatch this or you have a question that pops up later, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer questions. I wrote on this sheet that I had one crush in my life, And I can't even tell you that crush, like I want to say I was 23. That crush was not even to a person, really. It was to this heart. I think I was crushing on somebody's heart during worship. Hot mess. Yes, I know. But it lasted 2 seconds and I was over it. Thank you, Miss Felicia. I don't think I've ever had crushes outside of that. Ever. So, yeah. If you guys don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and get ready for bed. I have a long day tomorrow. Okay, so I'll talk to you guys later.